to this story now. Measures have been put in place to curb the spread of COVID-19. But what good are these measures if there is no public cooperation? Well, the Health Department was forced to approach the court after a family of 3 refused to be quarantined. A mother and daughter tested positive for COVID-19, while the father refused to be tested. Let's discuss this now and discuss what the law says about the rights of patients versus a possible endangerment of society at large. And we speak to constitutional law expert, that's Professor Pierre de Vos. Prof, thank you very much for your time. So a national disaster has been declared by the President, as we all know. What are the rights of a person who is infected versus a public who is coronavirus free?
Yes, so actually this is not part of the National Disaster Declaration. This is part of the National Health Act. There are regulations that says that if you are suspected of having the virus or any other illness, then the state can force you to be tested, can force you to be in isolation, and if you have been in contact with somebody that has the virus, you can also be forced to be tested and you can be forced to be quarantined. So this is obviously an infringement or a limitation of your rights, but I'm sure that that is justified in terms of the Bill of Rights, because the purpose of this provision is to stop the spread of the virus, and there's no other way of doing it. So it's the only way of making sure that some people do not infect others. So for that reason, the law, specifically the regulations in the National Health Act, provides for this.
Let's talk then, Prof, about the conduct of the family in question. What are the legal consequences for what they've done, particularly if it happens that they have infected other people as a result of their behavior?
Yes, so the regulations actually say if you don't comply with them, then you can be fined and you can face other penalties. Whether that will be the case here, I'm not sure. I don't know all the details. But there are provisions there which forces you to comply with the regulations. The regulations also contains other provisions, for example, that if you're a healthcare provider, you have to report this to the relevant authority. So everybody who's tested in private, those private healthcare people must inform the government that there was a test and that the test was positive or negative.
Yeah. Prof, perhaps as a final question to you, health authorities could not immediately quarantine this family. They first had to get a court order in order to secure their cooperation. Does this weaken the government's resolve in trying to contain this virus? And how or what do they do to tighten the legal implications here?
Yeah, you see, this is a difficult question because you have to balance on the one hand the interest and the rights of people. So if you're going to have this provision and people refuse and they are detained without their consent, that is a severe infringement of your rights. So at the moment, the regulations say that you have to have a court order. It is to safeguard against abuse of this procedure, because, of course, at the moment, we all know that the government is doing what it needs to do. But the law is also made for in case there is a problem with the use and abuse of the provision. So for the moment, that is the way it is. I think unless this starts to be widespread, I don't think it should be scrapped, because it is important that while we take drastic measures, we do not infringe too much on the rights of individuals.
Just out of interest, Prof, before I let you go, if and when a state of emergency is declared, what are our rights?
Yes, so state of emergency, I think, for me, I don't think it's necessary at the moment, because the legislation, the Disaster Management Act, contains extreme powers for the government to deal with it. But if there is a state of emergency, then what happens is that about 90% of the rights in the Bill of Rights can then be derogated from. They can be ignored or suspended to the extent that it is necessary to deal with the emergency. So if that happens, we won't have the same rights that we have now, with the exception of a few, like the right not to be discriminated against.
Pierre de Vos, thank you very much for your time, constitutional law expert.